Hi, Tom Trento here with breaking news for Project Clarity and all viewers worldwide. Donald Trump Jr. is under massive investigation, may wind up in prison, may even be determined to be a treasonous traitor.
Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. Not only is Donald Trump Jr. a bad person, obviously, he may in fact be a Russian spy.
These emails are a textbook example and evidence of criminal intent, and that is potentially a violation of the Espionage Act. Yes, treason.
Yes, the Espionage Act, the very one that sent Julius and Ethel Rosenberg to the electric chair.
No, not really. Here's the real situation. Don Jr. has the unhinged New York Times in the Russian kill box. What do I mean by that? Here's the situation. About 20 years ago, I was walking in the Mekong Delta with Richard Marcinko, Dick Marcinko. Dick's also the founder of SEAL Team 6. As we were walking, producing a documentary, he started to explain to me the SEALs' legendary kill box, where they constructed a military strategic position to kill the Vietnamese enemy as they enticed them into a particular area. In a very similar way, though Don Jr. may not realize it at this point, but he has the unhinged New York Times in a beautiful Trump loves Russia kill box. Truly, Donald Jr. has them in the kill box psych zone perfectly. When we talk about the New York Times, the unhinged New York Times, it's very important here at Project Clarity to kind of dig down a little bit and define this amorphous New York Times. Are we talking about some sort of big building in New York or some historic gray lady? And what are we talking about? Right now, their dynamics, their demographics have changed. Most of the journalists on the left, and this would hold true at the New York Times, are Democrats, over 90%. They graduated from some Ivy League school with this socialist idea of changing the world to their worldview. They've foregone a belief in God and America and apple pie, all of that. And if you don't believe me, take a look at this 1-minute movie that they put together, which they believe indicts Donald Trump Jr. in this Russian caper. Check this out. What you're looking at is a 1-minute PowerPoint that is presented by the New York Times as evidence of the implication of Donald Trump Jr. in colluding with the Russians. And the essence of this short PowerPoint is that a friend of Donald Trump Jr. sent him an email to arrange a meeting with a Russian attorney to get dirt on Hillary. And the real smoking gun from the left's point of view is that Don Jr. said, if you have dirt on Hillary, I'm paraphrasing, I love it, and it could be very useful in the end of the summer of 2016. That's the essence of what this PowerPoint says. But we're showing you that the New York Times is doing all they can to go after the Trumps. All right. Now, for the sake of the conversation, let's stipulate, as we would in a court of law, let's stipulate that everything in that little PowerPoint is 100% accurate and is as it appears to be. So what? So what? Let's step through this with a half a brain, and look at a legal analysis. Donald Jr. receives an email from a friend. Okay. Anybody tell me what crime he commits from receiving an email from a friend? No crime there. Next, email tells him he can get dirt on Hillary Clinton. Isn't that what you're supposed to do in a political campaign? That's what the Clintons do. That's what they're masters of doing. So, hey, I can get dirt on Hillary Clinton. What crime, New York Times, is committed there? Next, This dirt, though, now we're moving in here. The dirt is coming from the Israeli government. Did I read that properly? No. The Canadian government. No. The Egyptian government, the Italian government, the Swedish government, Sudan, Mexico, Australia, Austria, Germany. No, the Russian government. So the dirt is coming from people in the Russian government. Would it be different if it was coming from people in the Canadian government or people coming from the Egyptian government? What crime has been committed to get dirt from Hillary Clinton from somebody in a foreign government? Now people are going, no, there's got to be a crime. There's got to be. Let's continue. Donald Jr. says after reading this email, if you really have dirt on Hillary, I love it. We can use this later on in the summer. What crime is it for somebody involved in a political campaign to say, we got opposition research on our opponent? What crime has been committed at that point? Let's continue. No crime so far for those of you who have a brain. Then he says, I love it. Is it a crime to say that you love opposition research? No crime. So far, the unhinged New York Times, the nutcase lefties are grasping at non-legal straws. But remember March 2015 when President Obama funded the State Department to give money to groups that were actively working against Prime Minister Netanyahu's re-election?
In the Israeli election, what did the Senate committee find out?
They found out they were sending American tax dollars were used on nonprofits, One Voice and these other groups. They spent $350,000 was traced, but there was other money that's fungible where they were building a voter database. They were organizing. Ultimately became a super PAC that took in millions of dollars of campaign contributions, much from American Democrats and Obama supporters, that was run by Jeremy Bird, who was the Obama for America political director. And the one goal of the super PAC was to defeat Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Taxpayer money was used by the Obama administration to try to defeat. That is so colluded involvement in a foreign country. It isn't funny, and we screamed and yelled at that time. Nothing like that has happened here. All right, now here's the U.S. statute that's being used by the unhinged New York Times, the nutcase lefties, and the wacko media folks out there. And I'll read the title of the statute. It simply says, Prohibition on Contributions, Donations, Expenditures, Independent Expenditures, and Disbursements by Foreign Nationals. So all the language relates to money. It focuses on foreign nationals. In the description and the definitions, it defines a foreign national as a person who's not an American, essentially. And then for our conversation, edification, and stimulate debate, here's the language that is being used to implicate, by the left, implicate Donald Trump Jr. I'm reading. Contributions and donations by foreign nationals in connection with elections. Okay? So far, we have foreign nationals, elections. Looks like the left may be on a little bit of solid ground here. And I'm reading. A foreign national shall not directly or indirectly make a contribution or a donation of money or expressly implied promise to make a contribution or a donation in connection with any federal, state, or local election. Did they directly or indirectly make a contribution to the Trumps? Did they donate money? Did they imply a promise to make a contribution or a donation? No. So you say, Tom, how is that language being used by the left to say Donald Trump Jr. is a traitor? Well, there's a little phrase in there. Here, this shows the fact that Donald Trump Jr. has the unhinged New York Times in the psych box, the kill box of reality, because the New York Times is betting the farm on these words. This is a little phrase I didn't read the first time I read the definition. It says, make a contribution or donation of money or other thing of value. Other thing of value. Now, a normal reading of that in the context of money would assume, and the writers who wrote this, if they had any other idea of something other than something had a fiduciary value, like a building, an airplane, something like this. We're gonna contribute an airplane to the Trumps. It's not money. This is covered in here. Any other thing of value, but no, there was no Russian airplane or building or Ferrari or anything like that. What the left is saying, the unhinged New York Times, they're saying the other thing is opposition research. It's information about how Hillary colluded with the Russians. That's this whole idea here. Colluded with the Russians that was going to be given to the Trumps so they can expose Hillary's collusion with the Russians. That's what the New York Times is saying here, stating. Completely absurd, absolutely absurd. If you don't believe me, check out one of Donald Trump's attorneys, a fellow we've had on our shows in the past, a friend of the conservative movement, an intellectual, a first-class attorney. Listen to Jay Sekulow reporting and commenting on the absurdity of finding opposition research as part of the statute here that deals with money.
Well, first, here's the first thing I'll say, and my friend Governor Mike Huckabee said out something very similar. So the media is going after Donald Trump Jr. for doing what? Releasing the full email chain, unlike Secretary Clinton, who deleted her emails. So, I mean, let's put that in perspective, number one. Number two, you look at it from a legal perspective here. There's no illegality in the meeting. Now, the fact is, nothing transpired. So what do we have here? And I think Donald Trump Jr. said it correctly. There's a media frenzy on Russia right now. This has been going on for several months. But when you look to see what actually took place, a meeting takes place. Nothing happens as a result of this 15 or 20-minute meeting. And at the end of the day, there's no illegality. So people could be, they want to create a media hysteria on this. But the reality is, I'm just trying to look at it as a lawyer and saying, okay, what statute of the law has been violated? What code section has been violated here? And it doesn't exist.
That's Sekulow. But what are the news crazies saying? I want to underscore this. We want to make this firmly understood in the mind of all of our Project Clarity subscribers and all the new subscribers. Check out what the news crazies are saying about that statute and Donald Trump's violation of that statute.
I told you that I thought there was a Kremlin clan and these were his allies. I had a resolution back in February that said it should be investigated for collusion.
I would characterize it this way at the outset of the investigation. There is circumstantial evidence of collusion.
The claims of the administration for the last 6 months that collusion is not even on the table has been undone by the president's son's own word.
I think what it means is that a federal judge found that people in Trump's organization were colluding with the Russians.
What would change the world is if, Russia was interfering in the election and they weren't doing it on their own and he was in on it.
He was admitting that he had met with this Russian lawyer for the purpose of receiving information against Hillary Clinton. I thought, my God, this kid was dropped on his head. As a child, could he possibly be admitting this?
How stupid of Don Jr. I mean, I guess it runs in the family to go on Twitter when he is clearly in legal jeopardy.
This can't be dismissed as people out to get Donald J. Trump Jr. or fake news. This is evidence of willingness to commit collusion.
This is how I see it so far. This is to help all the people at home. What's the conclusion? Collusion? No, we don't have that yet. I see illusion and delusion. So just so we're clear, everyone, 4 words: conclusion, collusion, no. Illusion, delusion, yes.
Okay, it's pretty obvious that this is another nothing burger coming to the Trump camp. If you're straight on this, Don Jr., here's our advice. Number 1, punch the hell back. Punch back. Let me tell you something. You have the unhinged New York Times in the Russian psych box. You're inside their head so deeply it isn't funny. They hate you. They hate your father. They hate God. They hate the Constitution. They hate America. And they can't see past St. Petersburg. Punch back. Number 2, second point. Punch back. You have the news crazies in the Russian psych box. They hate you. They hate your father. They hate God. They hate America. They hate the Constitution. You're so deeply in their head. You got them in this Russian psych box. They can't see past St. Petersburg. And we got a third bit of advice for you, Don Jr. punch back. You got the nutcase lefties so deep in the Russian psych box, they hate you, they hate your father, they hate your family, they hate America, they hate God, they hate all that is good. Bottom line, when supposedly intelligent people, like the almost Vice President of the United States of America, says something as ridiculous as this, you know you're deeply inside the psych box.
You think this is treason?
That the investigation, it's not, nothing is proven yet, but we're now beyond obstruction of justice in terms of what's being investigated. This is moving into perjury, false statements, and even into potentially treason.
Don Jr., you know that the intellectual and credible death inside the Russian psych box is inevitable for the unhinged New York Times, for the nutso lefties, and for the news crazies. Hang in there. You will prevail. You will be vindicated, fully vindicated. And for that accomplishment, you will be even hated more by the unhinged New York Times, by the nutso lefties, and the news crazies. Remember, Deus vita, God lives.